scared. I can't tell what's going on.
Yeah, don't be messing with the lights now. Be messing with my beauty. All right, we are live. Let's see here. I believe. Yep, we are.
What is that going on?
Oh, this is old school live from a while back. Instead of playing music this time, we figured we'd play a little bit. We're getting a little bit of shadow over there. We'll have to work on that, but that's all right. We won't worry about that right now.
Where at? This way?
It don't even worry about it because I don't
Your
know which.
side?
It could. Is it? I'm trying touching that one. Nope, it ain't that one. Put that one back. Wait. Go back where you were. Yeah, right there. Perfect. Okay. All right, we are live.
Oh, good. I can see the comments from here.
Yep.
Now I'll be able to read.
Read everything? All right, good deal. All right, so let's go ahead and get it kicked off here. Let me go ahead and yeah, hey, we happy to be back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another. Yeah, you better put it on.
It is.
Well, all right, I'm gonna have to go back. Now you going? Hold on, hold on.
That's all right. Here we go. It's the conversations out of the hood. You can't have a conversation without the hood.
Without the hood, that's right. All right. So shall we start over then? Okay.
All right.
Let me get this out of here now because I don't need that. But, all right. Well, anyway, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another great episode of Conversations Under the Hood. I'm your host, Robert Helm, and we have the super host, Dr.
Linda Helm.
Hey.
Welcome.
Welcome back. Well, I'm going to, I don't know, this is going to be interesting because we got to catch up from last week. And last week we had a tornado going on and it was crazy. So anyway, I didn't get a chance to share this out. So I am going to do that. But why don't we kind of just get it kicked off a little bit. And I don't know, I guess, we can't really talk about last week per se unless you just want to talk about
we can't, but, one thing, I was stuck at the grocery store. I had just left to go, this is why you got to check the weather sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So there I was, stuck at the grocery store, and I had to have all of us go to the back, a shelter because the tornado warnings, it was just that severe.
Yeah.
So I think I was there for like at least a couple hours, trying just to get groceries. So when we came out, I left my cart, out in the alley, and it was full of everything that I wanted to buy. So I couldn't find my cart. I'm walking around. I'm like, well, what happened? And so I ran into these two young ladies. I'm like, did you see a cart full of stuff in there? They were like, oh, we didn't think it would belong to anybody, so we put everything away.
Oh, no.
I was just like,
you had to go back and shop again.
Yeah, but they were really nice. They remembered, a couple of people that were putting stuff away, so they started putting all that, stuff back in my cart, and I had to remember, everything else that was missing. So that was quite an adventure.
Man, I can imagine. That had to be crazy.
I know. I know. It was scary, though.
It was scary.
Because, the thunder and everything, that's just to show that, nature, is so powerful.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it has so much more control than we can ever imagine.
Right. Well, I was scared. I'm not gonna lie.
Y'all just kept calling me.
Yes.
My son called me, my daughter all the way from your university, she called me. She's like, Mom, where are you? Is everything okay? I'm like, I'm safe. I'm not going anywhere until this storm is over. So
yes, it was crazy because I was sitting on the porch and I've been in some crazy storms, right? Well, not like crazy, but crazy in terms of what I'm used to.
Yeah.
And I think as a kid, I was in one storm that I thought was a tornado. I'm not sure that it was really a confirmed tornado. But this experience this time, I'm not sure how people who live in like tornado prone areas and like those natural disaster prone areas, how they deal with that. Because I know I was like, I went from enjoying like, oh wow, look at how beautiful it is. It's calm. It's all the it's warm.
The lightning and all that.
Well, before even the lightning, it just seemed like it was a nice, really kind of still moment in time, if you will.
Yeah.
And just as I was having that realization, I heard this high wind. We got those towers that are on the side of our house.
Yeah.
So I heard this high wind, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. I don't feel it, And no longer I said that. It's like the wind said, oh yeah, and it came down and it just hit like the ground, and all of a sudden everything started moving, and the rain, it was so like it was a blinding rain, I guess you might call it.
Yeah.
And the wind, and it was just, and then when I did hear the lightning, that really scared me because I saw like this crackling kind of out of the corner of my eye from where I
Yeah.
was looking,
Yeah.
and I thought it was like much further away, but I heard the booming sound, and then
Yeah.
like the following day, I realized it was literally just on the other side of the street where
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
so that was pretty frightening, but yeah, weather can be
Yeah. No,
pretty exciting.
it was scary for me. I have a phobia.
Hmm.
For thunder and lightning.
Hmm.
You know, you know
Oh
that.
man, hold on.
But
I'm sorry, I almost forgot about this.
yeah.
We got some great folks already showing up here.
All right.
We
Welcome.
got
Welcome.
Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, Ron and Virginia
Oh,
Caldwell.
thank you so
Welcome,
much for
welcome. Good
joining.
evening, family. Thank y'all for
Hey,
showing up.
hey.
Uh-oh, we got Rob Green here watching too. Hey,
Okay.
what's
Come
going on, everybody?
aside.
Yeah, we were just sitting here
Thank you for
momentarily
joining.
politicking, and we
Policy.
know, well, politicking in terms of just conversating about, yeah, I'm
I
sorry.
heard that.
That
I was
slang,
like,
my
wait a
bad, my
minute.
bad. Um,
Yeah.
and Ron and Virginia, I'm just wondering if they happen to have experienced that same type of, because I'm not sure how far, because like tornadoes, it seemed like when
Yeah.
they
You
hit, they
take a
only go
certain
so far.
path.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. So I'm not sure about everybody else, but I know our power was out for like a day and a half.
Yeah.
And let's talk about that, man. Because actually that was
Oh.
pretty. Matter of fact,
Yeah.
we're gonna clap for you because, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell y'all, my baby, my wonderful wife, excuse me, um, I guess she surprised me because when the power went out and I'm kind of fiddling around. I've been learning about solar energy, so I've got this little project that I've been working on. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to figure out how to get this light and power and all that. And so I was working on that, and I forgot about the food side of things. My wife had just literally bought like a lot of food, and when the power went out, we had no idea what we were going to do with that. So we were like, oh man, maybe we should go get some ice cubes or something, and just try to pack them in there. And my wife came up with the idea of how about we just cook the food that could go bad. And my thinking was that's going to be a whole lot of food.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be pretty exciting because we cooked. It was like camping, right? We
Yeah.
started a fire, man, and figured out a way to prop the pots and pans. And then you came up with the idea about the thing from the stove, putting that over the top of the wood, and then setting it. And so it just worked out really
Yeah,
nice,
you
man.
know,
That was
how
really
we
cool.
gonna cook? We don't have power. I was like, but we have wood
Okay.
and we have a lighter. We can make a fire,
Mm-hmm.
and that was kind of like a really good memory for me because it kind of like took me back to my childhood.
Uh huh.
We cooked on an open fire outside, and food really tastes very differently when you cook it that way.
Right.
So, just knowing that we can make a fire. And
Mm-hmm.
it was really cold, which
It
also
was.
kept us, warm.
It was.
Now, knowing how to be safe, and also to cook. So,
Mm-hmm.
lucky for us, a while ago, we bought some pots and pans that you can use to cook outside on an open fire as if we knew.
Right.
So, and I was able to dig those up. I went to the basement and I found two, three of them. So we're able to cook. What we cook? We cooked a lot of chicken. We made some fish sticks, because
Yep.
that's what the kids wanted.
Yeah.
We made some chicken nuggets. We get all of this in an open fire. But just
Man, don't forget about the
knowing
broccoli.
the
Remember the
broccoli,
healthy
we
part.
made broccoli as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we made it happen. So, and it is really interesting because today one of the things that we wanted to talk about is like how do you survive high grocery prices? How do you survive, power outages and
Right.
all of that? How can you look around you and be resourceful and see everything else that you can use that's literally free?
Right.
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 For us, we're able to make fire and we have a lot of woods around here. So we're really fortunate in
Right.
that sense. And from there, knowing how to cook,
Right, right.
anything you can cook, even including, chicken nuggets and fish sticks and all of that in the open fire. So, to me, just going back to when I was a little kid, because that's how we cooked back home, it wasn't really a challenge, but it made me think like, what about people that never really had this experience?
Right. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off here, man. I'm looking at these comments here. So, Ron and Jenny Caldwell said that fortunately for them, they weren't really affected because their power lines are buried over there where they're at.
Oh,
So,
nice.
so that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, we
we
could
out
have
here in the
restocked.
country, and that unfortunately our everything is still airborne out here. Let's see here. Oh, Jenny says, "Man, I wish I would have called your neighbors. We would have loved to help y'all and support y'all through that." You know what? I'm so not used to calling on
Yeah.
anybody that it's like it's not the first thing that I can think of,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I gotta focus on this year is learning how to reach out to people for help because I'm so used to being the person to help folks that it's hard sometimes to ask for help. So I appreciate that. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
How about I say this? How many
Hold
times
up,
do
hold
they
on.
have to reach out? Okay, I'll come
Well,
back
I
to
just
that.
want
Go
to make
ahead.
sure we acknowledge our other guests here.
Yeah.
We got Kate Thurman. Hello. She says hello to
Hey, Kay.
everybody.
Nice to
Hey,
see you.
thank you everybody for just stopping in here. I know it's a Sunday, so I just want to make sure I take a moment to thank y'all. So I'm sorry I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
That's
go ahead.
okay. That's all right. Yeah.
Go ahead. What were you saying? Though?
No, I was gonna go back to my sister here, Virginia Anderson,
Mm-hmm.
Caldwell.
Mm-hmm.
She reached out when we were sick.
Right.
She
Yep.
reached out when we were, needed
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things, and here we are. We had a power outage, and it's like I don't know how it's gonna take for us to get used to asking for help. We're really bad at that,
Indeed.
and we have so many people, friends and relatives, and who
Mm-hmm.
really care about us.
Right.
But we're so used to just figuring it out, just you and I, that even when help is there, dangling right in front of us, we don't see it. We're
Right.
in such a survival mode that we don't reach out. So, our apologies, and we're going to do better because we could have made our life so much more easier. However, it was quite adventurous. My
It
kids
was.
were so excited and
It
they were
was.
just so happy seeing us outside making food in an open
Yep.
fire, and it was very dark outside because we had no power and everything like that. So it was quite an experience for them.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my, the point that are we, I know I'm ready. I always say, honey, worst come to worst, I can go outside and I can identify plants that are safer to eat. I can make fire and I can cook. And more than anything, I can build you a mud hut.
Right. Right.
So, worst come to worst, learning those survival skills is very, very important.
Sure.
Because I can tell you this. When you are faced with that kind of situation, it really doesn't matter whether you have a PhD or not, Dr. Lindy Way, or
Right.
whatever kind of degree you have.
Right.
If you don't have those skills, those basic survival skills, life will really suck, basically.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you with a question. So, from this experience that we recently had, what did you learn from that?
Well, what I've learned is that it's really super crucial,
Mm-hmm.
right, to be self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
Because what if, I mean, we're in a very interesting time right now. If you don't have access to the grocery stores and you don't have access to all these luxuries, all these conveniences that we have, including transportation, what do you do?
Right.
For us, it was like, boom, we didn't even check the weather or anything like that. We had power outage, we had tornadoes and everything. At the end of the day, I had to feed my kids. So I didn't have a lot of time to try to figure out anything other than like make a fire, cook some food. And I'm not gonna, inconvenient them. I ask them, kids, what do you want to eat? My youngest say fish sticks, chicken nuggets. I was like, boom, I got you. Even
Right.
though it's just an open fire,
Right.
I can use my air fryer. But anyway, long story short, or long answer short, is like tap within your knowledge and strengths and find out if you have the ability to be self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, and some people say stock up, right?
Right.
That's one way. Do stock up, but if you don't have a way to cook whatever you stock up, then what?
Jenny says sometimes, actually a lot of times, those plants that live outside in your yard have more nutrition than the plants that are at the store. So,
I
just
agree.
what's interesting, because as I'm thinking about what you're saying as far as being, kind of self-reliant, right?
Yeah.
Yesterday when we were out walking in the yard, I think it was yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, we were looking at the mullen
Walking the
plants.
yard every day.
Yeah, no, that might have been me and a friend actually. I can't remember, but it was someone that I was walking around with, and I was looking at plants that I had learned from Miss Caldwell.
Yeah.
That are healthy plants. Whether
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
for herbs for healing or like things that you can eat. And so now I find myself kind of stepping differently when I'm walking in the grass. Now I'm looking for things that look familiar. So
You're no longer stepping on those yellow mushrooms.
right, yeah, exactly.
Or
So
cutting them.
exactly. So now I'm more inclined to look for those things to see how, what's growing, where it's growing, how it's growing, because what I learned from this past power outage is that I didn't feel like that was something in terms of a tornado anyway,
Yeah.
that we really ever had to be concerned about. And
Right.
so
Right.
I think it's kind of naive, as people who are experiencing any form of weather,
Right.
to think that it's going to always be, it's going to hit elsewhere and not you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so knowing that, I said to myself, I need to do something that will, kind of position us so that the bare necessities can be met.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, what are those bare necessities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in the kind of chaos that we were experiencing before because I think you were at work, and so we were kind of here experiencing it by ourselves for a moment, right?
Right. Right.
And trying to figure out, all of a sudden, somebody just said, now you can't do what you do every day. What do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And so, having 5 kids and even my own self, a lot of what I do is related to technology or,
Yeah.
those types of things.
Yeah.
And so now it was like, oh my goodness, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Right. And so having kind of a forethought of that, like, okay, so if we find ourselves in a position where we don't have the internet or we
Mm-hmm.
don't have the ability to use our phones,
Right.
what can we do to still do certain things? One of those things being, you were gone.
Yeah.
That's why we were calling you someone, because we
Yeah. I
were worried
was at the
about you.
grocery store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we like, so now if we were, which we at some point, that was the only thing that was working, was our ability to make calls and to text, because we couldn't we couldn't watch stuff or engage in a lot of the apps. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. I'm
that's
sorry, I'm mixing the two things. I was at work. The situation you're
first.
talking about.
You were at work
yeah.
at first
Yeah.
but the power went out early. Remember?
Yeah.
So
That's true.
and then when you, or wait a minute, no, I take that back.
Yeah, I think we're mixing two things because
You were at work. Then you what? No, and then you got off of work, and how did that happen? You got off work early, I think, or something.
yeah, because
Maybe
of that, yeah, I had to let my team out early, and I came home.
because of
Yeah,
yeah, something like,
the
yeah,
weather
yeah,
anticipation.
right.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the point that I was making was you being somewhere else, whether you're at work or a store, whatever,
Separated.
and
And our
then us
daughter
not,
being in Ann Arbor.
yeah,
Yeah.
us not being able to communicate,
Right.
and we're not even that far away. But then in our case, we weren't able to even like go places because the power lines were down. They had the streets
Yeah.
closed off. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
In certain places. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry, y'all. I probably got y'all a little bored here. I apologize, but I was just reliving that experience because it was crazy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was insane. But what's interesting is that watching my kids trying to figure out what they do with themselves, without the internet, without power, without all these shows that they usually watch, or without Minecraft, the ability to play there.
Right.
What do we do? But one of the things that I enjoyed is watching them getting really excited, trying to figure out how we're going to make this food on an open fire. Enjoying the open fire, the black sky,
Right.
right? With the, like you can see them appreciating something as if it's so amazing because they're not used to that.
Right.
Normally they
Jenny
would-
says
go ahead.
here, excuse me, Jenny. Virginia Caldwell says you need to have 2 to 3 weeks of dry food available for you and your family, at least.
Yeah,
I agree.
absolutely.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Because at some point, I started to really panic for a moment, man. Because I'm like, man, we just spent like $500 on groceries, and literally as you checking out, or the power's out. You know what I mean? And then from that point on, we had no idea when it was going to come back on, and yeah, so that is something that you should certainly, dry foods. I think one of my daughters had mentioned, Dad, we should start getting canned goods. Every time you
Yeah.
go to the store, just buy in canned goods, because those are easy and those are quick, and they don't have to be put in the freezer or refrigerator. And I
Yeah,
was like, as much as I know that, it's not something that's on the forefront of my mind.
right.
And so I was like, you know what, you're right. So I think that's a good thing. Matter of fact, that'll be my nugget
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
day. Is when you go grocery shopping, you should at least buy one thing that has long term, like storage ability, and that doesn't have to be stored in a controlled environment per se.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yeah. And another thing too, like I watch my kids, especially the younger ones, as they were putting grocery away. They were putting already frozen, like frozen chicken,
Right.
on top of the like a chicken nuggets that
Right.
were not so frozen. So they were really being strategic. But it was really good to see them being that creative
Yeah.
and actually using, their intelligence, if you will. But also being excited about eating food that was being cooked outside, having them being part of that, process.
Right.
So one of the things that I've learned throughout our marriage, really, because there was once upon a time when we were young, our first jobs, we were pregnant, we bought our first house,
Now
we
we
got our
wasn't
first
pregnant. You was
jobs.
pregnant. Don't even try. I delivered, y'all.
Yeah, all by myself. But anyway, so with all of that, of course, we didn't have, enough money to do certain things.
Right.
So but what we were doing then, I forgot my point. So you should have not interrupted me.
I'm
But
sorry.
anyway, it was just really interesting to see that when you have each other, and uh, how you can work together instead of blaming each other, to make things work.
Right.
We're still able to maintain. So fast forwarding to just a couple of weeks ago when we're out of power, instead of stressing, wondering when the power's coming back and blaming each other, we made this actually a fun event.
Right.
And it was so good to see the kids not stress, actually getting excited about cooking, from outside and say, oh, this food tastes different. And I'm like, yeah, it's because it's cooked, in the open fire.
Right.
But where I was going with that is like, learning basically how to survive and how to control your stress level
Right.
and how to turn something, into, make it fun, instead of
Make a
like
bad situation
make a
into-
bad
yeah.
situation and much better. And especially our 9-year-old, man, she just couldn't have enough of that open fire and everything else.
Right.
But they kept asking, can we have this? Can you cook this? I'm like, oh, no. I'm not cooking a whole feast. Like I'm cooking for the whole village.
Right. Right.
Because, the food is going to go to waste. But,
Right.
What I was going to say with that is that learning, basically how to rely on each other, how to be creative, how to make a bad situation, fun.
Right.
Even, we go back to remember one time we were so broke, we had to rob our first daughter's piggy bank, just to buy some food.
Right.
But now when we go back to those memories, it's so much fun and encouraging and reminding you that life sometimes can be so unpredictable.
Right.
So learning how to manage stress, how to know that everything that's real, to you right now, it's also a perspective. Like you can change it.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
if you're aware of it. But
Right.
that's what I was going to say.
No, I think that's a very, very valid point, man, and I can appreciate that. Let's see here. What do we got? Ronald Caldwell says, yes, our kids love cooking on an open fire. We often have dinner outside by the fire pit in the summer.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah.
We coming.
Yeah, I know
What y'all
that's right.
cooking?
Yeah, I know that's right.
Coming.
No, that's
Yeah.
great. I think, it makes for, it brings the family back together. And see, that's kind of where I was going with when I said about not having the ability to use the technology in the ways that you have. You minimalize. You go back to the very basic essentials,
Right.
texting and phone calling.
Yeah.
And if that's not something that you're big into, then what do you do, right? And so I think,
Yeah, for us, we told stories. We took turns telling stories.
yeah, we sure did. We sat in the living room. That's right. Now imagine this, y'all, and I don't want to spend all night on this, but that's exactly what we did. I was trying to figure out how to stay warm because, ironically, it was warm when the storm started, and it was freezing in the evening. I think it was about 38 degrees, or something like that
was
outside.
Really cold. Yeah.
So,
Fahrenheit.
so that the half a day we winded up being cold, and then the whole following day, I think they didn't get the power back on until like
was
3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
On the
following
so
day.
it was almost 2 days of no power, and
Yeah.
imagine that's not very long, but boy, it did sure seem like a long time. So what I'm hoping to do here, we are getting close to the halfway point, okay? And so I want to introduce what I was hoping to talk about last week. And we didn't get a lot of time to really even talk about it. Matter of fact, I don't think we had any time to talk about it. But I had put a post out on Facebook last 2 weeks ago, I think it was now, where basically I was talking about negative energy. And I know you have talked about that on multiple times, especially throughout our relationship and growth and things.
Mm-hmm.
How negative energy impacts other people,
Right.
right? Or your negative energy impacts other people.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's I can't remember the exact quote now. Matter of fact, I did. Let me see here. I took a picture of it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, you and I talk about that a lot.
Yeah,
You
hold on though.
know.
I want to make sure I say the quote first, and then we can jump into it. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I.
Depending on how quickly you can find
I
it.
got it. It's right here. Boom. It
That's-
says,
yeah.
and this was March 29th,
Yeah.
I think it was, or the 28th, something like that. But it says, did you know that negative energy robs you of life, health, and happiness?
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, I had a few people chime in on that, and one lady in particular had indicated that she would like to be engaged in that conversation. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't think
We didn't get a chance to share that when
yeah,
you sent
because
it
I'm
to
just
me.
sharing this out now, and we kind of got a late start here. But anyway, so let's jump on that. Let's go into that now.
And there's always next week, of course, to expand on this.
Yeah.
Um, well, I'll let you expand more on that quote because I have thoughts around that and I don't want to be verbose.
Well, but that's
So,
that's the whole idea, was to really kind of dive into that whole negative energy, because I think as people, right, and I don't remember exactly what motivated me to post that now, because it's been a
mm,
while, but I know one thing, is how often I think about when negative stuff happens, right?
hmm
And I say negative just being things that you know
not so favorable.
yeah, how when they don't go the way you want them to go, sometimes from there we shut down, like, oh, we just get mad or whatever, and we don't sometimes take a moment to see what, like, they might say the silver lining, or you might say,
hmm
the glory. Like, you've heard people talk about it differently, but
Right.
ultimately it's like within those situations there's something that can be gained, something
Right.
positive, and
Yeah.
which is
There's a
not
lesson.
necessarily, yeah, related. I mean, not necessarily. I don't think what the motivation was behind this post, but it was more so just focused on people becoming, I think, realizing that energy
hmm
that you bring sometimes, from, let's say, from work home when you had a bad day,
hmm
it now creates a situation where you can impact other people's day and
Yeah.
make their day just as bad as yours. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was
Yeah.
kind of, I feel like it was something surrounded around it. So go ahead, and I would
No,
like to
that's
know.
that's really really interesting you say that because one of the things that I do at work,
Mm-hmm.
especially in my one-on-one meetings with my team, or sometimes even with the whole team,
Mm-hmm.
I talk about creating an environment, at work where first everybody want to show up to because everybody feel engaged,
Right.
respected, appreciated, and involved,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And but at the same time, we're not going to see eye to eye every day. So there will
Right.
be situations that could be stressful,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes,
Certainly.
especially during this time of uncertainty.
Right.
So what happened is that I'm very, very aware of making sure that I articulate this with my team.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever happens here, your family don't deserve it.
Right.
You don't go home and take this energy with you.
Right.
So how can we make this environment, to also thinking about, when we leave this environment and go home,
Mm-hmm.
what do we take with us? Or can we make this environment so good that we don't have to do that? But there's a lot of studies and a lot of situations where people sometimes, especially in the leadership, where you have to stop by somewhere before you go home,
Right.
to release some of that stress and energy and all that, because to your point, your family and loved ones don't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not okay to go home and stress other people in the name of, I had a bad day at work. Well, that was your bad day.
Right.
What do all these kids or your spouse or everybody else,
Right.
have to do with it?
Right.
So again, that becomes, you have to be very self-aware and have that emotional intelligence, being aware of the kind of emotions you're in and how to control that.
Right.
And how to also, by controlling that and making sure that it doesn't pollinate to other people who don't deserve it.
Right.
Because we often give ourselves permission to treat people poorly,
Mm-hmm.
or to have our negative energy impact others, even though we know, but we give ourselves excuse that I had a hard day today,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm just in a bad mood, or it doesn't matter what it is. My phrase.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a terminal illness, it's a
Right.
choice.
Right.
If you
Right.
care about people around you, you will not subject them to whatever you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
You will take time to work out whatever you're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and have that clear delineation that this is you. It has nothing to do with these other people outside.
Right.
So you see, I told you I was going to be verbose,
No,
but
that's
it's
exactly
very
what I'm hoping
important.
for, because that
Yeah.
is essential information. I mean, that was something that I learned, right? Well, or I'm learning, right? Still, because I think my mood sometimes can still affect other people, and I try
Right.
to be aware and try to be conscious, which is why I'm the kind of person that likes to be alone. When
Right.
I'm feeling some kind of way, or if I'm angry or something like that, I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather not be around people, because I don't want to be triggered by what you might say if you trying to help me per se, like you talking
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
and if you're not trying to help me and you just like dwelling within the same environment that I am, in the case of if I'm responsible for you and all that, like my kids or
Right.
you,
Yeah.
um, like it just sometimes it can create additional stress, and it's like the idea of the straw that broke the camel's back.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes little things that don't mean nothing to you, they don't mean nothing to you because your legs are strong,
Mm-hmm.
right? In
Mm-hmm.
the context of the camel.
Right. Right. Right.
But when you have bared so much,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's say the bad day,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's why I choose to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rather sleep when I'm angry or feeling sad, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like I deal with it somehow. Like I find myself, I can lay there sometimes and just think about things and then get up and feel better about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I
You have
have,
time to process.
yeah, because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I'm dreaming it away, like turning it into a fictional situation versus a real situation almost. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it buys me some energy to be able to go on. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really interesting because for me, I had a lot of times where I came home really stressed and going through a lot.
hmm
But majority of time, you and the kids never knew,
hmm
right? Because of that, clear separation. Like
right,
this, it's me and work experience, and I choose not to let how this situation impacted me pollinate to my family, my
right,
husband, and my kids who have nothing to do with it and don't deserve it.
hmm
Right?
absolutely,
So majority of the time, I will sit there as soon as I see the smiles. My 9-year-old running to the door, hugging me, and everything like that. That's why I draw that positive energy. I get back and smile and interact with kids, and then when it's time to go to sleep, sometimes because there's this really good book that said the body keeps count, right?
hmm
Sometimes when you go to sleep, now I can't sleep because what I suppress to ensure that my family is not impacted with it, now it comes back to visit me at night when I'm trying to sleep.
right,
So you try to play, whatever the situation over and over and over again.
hmm
But recently I've finally realized that, wait a minute, I'm thinking about this situation. Everybody else went home, they done, they're probably having fun, drinking beer, and I'm up all night, still thinking about
right,
something that I cannot change. It happened in the past.
hmm
So then I start thinking, realizing that my perception is really everything,
hmm
right?
hmm
Because I can choose to just be like, oh, okay, yeah, that was annoying. That did hurt my feelings. Like, don't deny yourself the ability to validate your own feelings
hmm
and then process it and become okay with it. Because
hmm
most of the time, we just push those feelings away until you just can't, help it anymore, and then you blow up.
hmm
So, in those hours when I can't sleep, I've learned to just allow myself to rethink about the situation instead of pushing it away because it'll keep reoccurring.
uh-huh,
um, think about the situation and think about what could I have said or done, to either stand up for myself or to make the situation better, blah blah blah.
hmm
And I'll go through those scenarios, and when I realized that there could have been a lot of things that I could have said, you know
right,
that I could have responded, I could have spoken out or what have you.
hmm
And then I find myself thinking, if I have said what I know I can say,
Right.
you know, in my case, I have really hard skin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, believe it or not, I went through a lot. I grew up in apartheid South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I give the people the benefit of the doubt to think they hurt my feelings, but that's because I need to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be really hard to hurt my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? That's why
Right.
everything is sometimes can be humorous to me. However, I'm saying that to say sometimes I have really good comeback that I can say,
Mm-hmm.
but I start thinking like it will have hurt someone else much more than it is annoying to me because here I am thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
If I had said what I thought of saying at the time when the situation was happening, somebody may not have the faculties, right? May not have the strength to deal with humiliation or what have you,
Right.
you know, than I do,
Mm-hmm.
like I do.
So
So
that's
sometimes
emotional intelligence.
but it's also compassion.
Okay.
So there are a lot of people sometimes they deserve some of the comebacks,
Mm-hmm.
but I find myself holding back because I'm like, this will destroy you.
Mm-hmm.
So you may as well have your fun because I don't take you that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
for me, what you said really, when this meeting is over or whatever the conversation is over, it's literally it's
Right.
done.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm not even thinking about it afterwards. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like literally done.
Right.
Like I've gone through so much in life that I really cannot think of anything or anyone can do or say
Mm-hmm.
that can really hurt my feelings.
Right.
That's
Ron says Ronald Caldwell
Yeah.
says our energy is everything. Our
Yeah.
emotional response to external stimuli directly affects our energy. I agree, which
Yes.
ultimately affects our ability to attract our desired reality versus attracting more of the same negative energy.
True.
Man, if that
Yes.
ain't, I wouldn't even just say
Very well
attracting it,
said.
but to initiate it too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because
Or
I,
becoming aware of it.
yeah,
I tell people on my team this all the time. Positive and negative things are around us all the time. It just really depends on what you're looking for.
mm-hmm.
If you're looking for negativity, you'll find it. You'll never run out of it.
Right.
I mean, literally, somebody can say good morning.
Mm-hmm.
I know people will say, what's so good about it? Because of the space that they're already in, the
Right.
negative space that they're already in.
Mm-hmm.
Same phrase, you can say good morning to someone else, and it can mean the world to them.
Right.
Like, oh my God, my supervisor noticed me this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and she greeted me. My day just got better.
Right. Right.
So two
Right.
different situations. So
Absolutely.
being aware of your energy, and then giving yourself the permission and the ability to manage that, control that is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where I'm talking about, emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like I said, everything that we are going through, and I don't want to be insensitive to this, and if you just look at the fact that it's your perception and try to change it, even playing a game with yourself, trying to change it, you'll be so surprised how much power and control we have,
Right.
of a situation.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I was listening to matter of fact I had you listen to that video about perspective.
Oh, yeah.
So let's touch on that real quick. I can't remember the brother's name, but man, he's a very powerful speaker.
Yeah.
But just listening to him talk about the perspective of things, which kind of goes into what I was saying about like the silver lining or finding the glory or whatever.
Right.
It's like, you can, negative things can happen and you can just take them as negative and leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could, harness that negative energy, which is what I try to do. When I'm feeling some kind of way, like I said, I'll either sleep or I'll turn that energy into something that's useful for me.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as you see, it sometimes translates into cleaning. When I get into a mode or a mood, if you will,
Work hard.
or stressed, I take it out on work. When I was younger, I took it out on basketball. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I like the cleaning part.
yeah, I bet you do. Yeah, it's like I'm gonna start intentionally making me mad. Oh,
pissing
here we
you
go.
off. But I have a very
let the cat
clean
out the bag,
house.
folks. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
But no, I think, and once I got mature enough to realize that I had the capacity to do that, and that outcomes were far better
Yeah.
than to just dwell on the anger, to take it out on other people or what
Mm-hmm.
have you,
Mm-hmm.
because those create long term, right, impacts, outcomes, in a negative way.
Right.
And the way that I kind of view the cleaning is that, you know what, I'm angry, I'm upset right now, um, and frustrated. And so I'm going to do this because guess what? When I'm happy and
Mm-hmm.
everything is going great, I would be happy to be in a clean environment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
I kind of, I analyze it from that way, I guess, or
Yeah.
rationalize it, I should say, from that way. But
Yeah.
anyway,
No, I was teasing about making you upset so you can keep cleaning the house.
thanks. I hope
But
so.
but you know what? In that experience, right?
Uh-huh.
Like I said, most of the time I may be going through something. I may be angry. I may be frustrated. Half of the time you don't know.
Hmm.
The difference between you and I is that when you upset, oh, we all know.
I don't
We
know how to not.
all know. And then here's the I'll tell you
That's why I
what.
have to go be by myself. See, I
Right.
said,
But
okay, go
then
ahead, go ahead.
even if going to be by yourself, that is also come across also as like almost like a form of punishment, abandonment. You know what I'm saying? Do not speak to me right now. Go
I,
and take a nap. I
I
mean, you
hear
don't
you.
say that, but
Yeah,
that's the energy that it
that's how it's
gives.
interpreted. Like,
That's how
yeah,
it's
yeah,
interpreted,
I
right? And
understand that.
so that's very different from, you know, just detaching, making sure everybody's okay or whatever, and then go and have the time to process
I haven't grown that far
without,
yet. I'm
yeah.
still a little. I'm like in my 30s. You know what I mean? So I'm
When it
trying to.
comes to that,
Yeah, I feel like when I get to 50, I might made that next click. Cause you're right. Though all of those things that you just mentioned are really right, and I guess I still. And we've been married for 25 years almost
25
now,
years,
and
yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
still like when I reflect back at my pre-marriage days,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I just I was very immature in a lot of ways. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Very naive in a lot of ways. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for all of the people around me because I can just really kind of speak for the group of people that I associated with. Like there was I can't speak for their personal, home life
Yeah,
and stuff like that, but
yeah.
um certain things like for me, I just like I used to have to deal with stuff myself, right?
Yeah.
And so that was my way of and before I had people attached to me,
Yeah.
what I'm saying about me going to sleep or what I'm saying about being alone is
Yeah.
I'm still operating in that mode, not realizing that you're not really ever by yourself when you got a family
Yeah.
because you got
Especially
responsibilities and obligations,
kids.
yeah, all
Yeah.
that. So I'm aware of it and I'm trying to go to that point. I know I still have some growth, right, in certain areas,
You've been
but
doing a really good job though.
yeah,
I'm
but
reading
talking
about
about
that.
it,
Yeah.
this is like these are the things that are helping me grow better. Like because we look at our history together.
Mm-hmm.
How many conversations have you had to have with me about things to get, you know what I mean? And so I think it starts with that conversation, especially in this kind of scenario, right?
Yeah.
It's pleasant,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So having these conversations, I feel like kind of will speed that process up of
Yeah.
growing because when you kind of teaching you learning at the
Mm-hmm.
same time
But I was gonna say, relationship is like an investment,
right,
right? When
right.
you care and love your family,
Mm-hmm.
people, your spouse, your kids, you invest in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there is a return on investment because why it create a very loving, relationship, a peaceful household, a healthy relationship, with children, because if children don't get that support from home and validation, they're going to seek it outside. And that's where mostly they end up getting in unfavorable situations,
Right.
right? And it starts with the dynamics, at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been, super, super aware of how my energy is, especially around my children, around my family,
Mm-hmm.
and made a decision that I'm not going to make my household, the dynamics so unhealthy that my children will have to seek validation,
From somewhere else.
from
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Right.
That's why we're being very selective in terms of like who we expose our children to, who
Mm-hmm.
we have around, like certain unhelpful behaviors and all that,
Right.
we are. But yeah, so it's very important. But what I was going to say is that investing and the people that you love, it's just you give them a certain grace, right? Like for instance, when you get in those moods and all that, I've worked hard to say, hey, this is not okay. You're not gonna stomp out because these little people are watching you, and your energy is has a direct impact on them, and bringing that awareness to you, right? But that's it, and it can take a lot of energy, can be frustrating, but I care and love enough, for you and the kids as well. And hey, I'm still working on my own, shortcomings as well.
Right.
But, the first step is to become aware. And instead of deflecting, denying, and, justifying, just sit back and say, yeah, I acted like that, and I can see how I made the kids nervous. I can see how I made my spouse, upset, and not be okay with that, right? And go back and like, okay, I'm gonna need to do better. That's what I that's what I mean when you invest, in your relationship. But anyway,
No, that's a
like in
good
a
point.
deep thought.
Yeah, no, because I'm just thinking like how easy it is to be um selfish, trying to protect your own well-being sometimes. And I'm saying it because that's how I guess internalizing what you're saying, when I compare it to what I said about sleeping or being
Right,
alone. You
right.
know, um, because from a family perspective, right? You want to come together and help each other through things and so on and so forth, and hopefully find peace, right,
Yeah.
with your family. Uh, and so those are things that I have to. I mean, wow, you would think after 20 years, 25 years that those would be natural instincts now, but what they say, you learn the most, right, in your beginning parts of your life, and those weren't attributes that I came up with. So a lot of that stuff is still foreign. Like I have to really rationalize and make sense out of it in ways that trigger me to instinctively do it. Then you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And
Then afterwards. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah,
I'm
good
trying.
job.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
So
No, you know what though? It's like we you just never give up on the people that you love.
right.
And you use every opportunity to remind them, when they get there. I certainly, my biggest weakness is that when I've had enough, I shut people out. And that's not good. Right, because and sometimes I scare myself because sometimes once I draw that line and move away from people, it's hard for me, to come out of that space,
Right.
So I had to work with that as well. But can I afford to do that with my husband, or my kids?
Right.
Right. So
Right.
that forced me to become very aware of how I impact others and not allow myself any excuses whatsoever. To learn, especially when it comes to kids, right? To learn to put myself and how I feel, aside, and focus on the young, these little people that don't deserve it,
Right. Right.
and then figure out a way to go and be able to process without impacting them. Do I always get it right? No, but the kids are very sensitive, and they know.
Right.
They know when you have a bad day, and sometimes I read my kids' energy, like when they hugging me a lot, especially my 9-year-old, even my 16-year-old can want to sit on your lap all the time, can stop hugging you and kissing you. They telling you that I feel
That you're not all right.
that you're not all right,
Right.
and I love you and I want you to be all right.
Right.
Which in itself is like a gift, right? Because nobody else can give that to you.
Right.
But and so that's where sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I'm still carrying that energy. Let me breathe. Let me come out of that space so I can meet my children, at this positive energy that they are.
Right.
Same thing, with you as well. You may have something in your mind, and I know I'm stressed. I'm still thinking about what I need to do the following day, especially during the outages, right? Sometimes I have to think like, okay, my husband has nothing to do with it, and he too deserves my time.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I cannot bombard my head with all these outages and what's going on. And, that's his way of saying, hey, I too matter.
Right.
Get on and
Hey,
say,
I'm quick to put my order in. I
yeah,
write
you
on the
will, you will.
calendar. Hey, I need 2 to 4. Me time.
It's so interesting because I think that's a cultural thing.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? For me, I'm not used to ask for attention. I really am not. Like, it's hard for me to say, or even to say, hey, I'm lonely, I need attention, or I'm sad, I need a hug. It's like, I don't know how to do that.
Man, you got an overwhelming husband. What you talking about? You don't have to.
Yeah, I don't.
I try
That's true.
every
That's true.
free second. I'll be, hey, what's up? How you doing? Just
Which
checking
I'm
in.
very grateful, but sometimes, oh Lord have mercy.
Hey, I'll just be checking the temperature.
Anyhow, that's
Never know.
that's why I don't be tripping when the old lady's trying to make you breakfast.
Oh, here we.
I'm like,
Hey, we're not gonna talk about breakfast again. Let's see, Madala is not here, so we're not gonna talk about
like
them
not all
breakfasts.
breakfast is good breakfast. Okay.
Not all breakfast is good
That's
breakfast.
it.
All right, so we are 50 minutes in here, darling. So
Yeah.
I know this has been kind of all over the place because, we just, man, for some reason, we start getting on the road, we get on track, and then something crazy happens. So,
It's
but that's okay.
connected.
Yeah, it's all because this is like I'd rather just have a casual conversation and where we wind up wherever we wind up at. But let's try to see if we can find a nugget in the
Yeah.
midst of all of this stuff that we've been talking.
I think there's so many nuggets that you drop. There is a reason why I've been married for 25 years,
Okay.
right? And one of those reasons is because I have the ability,
Mm-hmm.
and unlucky for me, coming from a different culture,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so invested
Mm-hmm.
in trying to show somebody how strong I am and how I can do this, how I can stand this and that. I have the ability to look at the big picture,
Right.
and say, this is my family.
Mm-hmm.
Our health, our well-being, and our happiness is very important.
Right.
So I'm not going to make short-term decisions that have a long-term impact. I might not be happy with my husband right now because of this situation. So I'm going to isolate that and deal with it as it is instead of let it pollinate to the rest of our relationship and our children.
Right.
Right. So I had to grow up really, really fast, having to. So that really came in handy. But investing in people that you love, emotionally, of course, financially, yes, but emotionally, being patient, being, loving, being aware of your own energy, right? And being aware of your own, behavior and all of that. And, then be brave enough not only to process but analyze yourself and not always, allow your energy or negativity to impact others, people who don't deserve it. So majority of the time I hold back, which can be looked at as, oh, weakness. Oh, she's not talking back or she's not fighting. It's just that it's not worth it, and that's not what I want to invest in my family.
Sum that nugget up, because that was a golden nugget.
Yeah,
That
you
was.
saw it. I don't know
Yeah,
if you listening.
that's you.
That's a test.
Oh, don't even go there, because I got my nugget to share. I'm trying to keep my
Yeah.
nugget stored. So, can you sum that up though, just like in just a couple of words? Like, what do you think the main point of that is?
Love your family enough to invest in them, and regardless of how you feel or what you're going through, separate that to make sure that it doesn't pollinate to people who don't deserve it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, because like I said, that was a long nugget, but it was
It
like
was.
every word was meaningful. You know what I mean, and important. Especially when you're thinking in the context of building high quality relationships with your spouse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
So,
then, another thing is like, don't make, decisions, short term decisions that have a long term impact.
very
Always
true.
assess, especially when you're in that space where you're driven by anger and frustration.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Watch the decision and the things that you do or say, words you can never take back. Some decisions may have long term impact. So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So my nugget is get prepared, right? And I'm saying that because I was one of those people. I've been seeing all of these, and I'm sure many of you all who watch this or who may be watching now have seen the videos of the doomsday this and apocalypse that and get a generator and store your food, grow your food, all these different things,
Yes.
right? And I'm gonna just tell you this: regular life, you need to be prepared for all of that. You
Mm-hmm.
know, because the fact that we have gotten so comfortable that we have really become complacent in a lot of ways
Mm-hmm.
because we're so reliant on everything. Um, we need to now really get prepared for that which we can do.
Mm-hmm.
Having pots and pans, things like that you can cook outdoors with. Having your
Yeah.
place outdoors that you can cook, whether it's a grill or a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
All of those things. It's important to get prepared. Having canned goods, having items that are not perishable. Or that have long life, shelf life, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Those are the things that we really want to do. So that's my nugget. Get
Yeah.
prepared.
Yes, get prepared. And I wrote in here that also alter your perception of the
Hmm.
situation.
Hmm.
I'm saying try to find positivity regardless of how hard the situation is. That definitely resonate with me,
Right.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I think, man, if we, I don't know, well, think about it like this too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you mentioned like your previous knowledge and experience, like building mud huts and different things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's survival guides out there. There's all kind of stuff, and I'm not recommending any particular thing other than
Yeah.
get prepared. So whatever that is for you, I know for me, I've been, points in my life, being low income housing, stuff like that. Where haven't had power for days.
Mm-hmm.
So these situations that might be catastrophic for some people, for me, I've kind of been through some of those things.
Right.
But it
Right.
still can be catastrophic when you get comfortable. So I'm telling you that as a person who has been somewhat comfortable, to get yourself ready, get your family ready, get prepared for power outage for a couple of days. No gas in some cases.
Yeah.
Just those kind of things. Get prepared. So.
Yeah. Anything. I mean, life can be really unpredictable,
Hmm.
right? Today, everything may be going really well. Tomorrow, life may decide to surprise you. So being prepared, and especially emotionally, you know, like I was teasing earlier, like if we had our ups and down financial turmoil, but what I made sure I don't do is berate, my husband or anybody around me because of our financial status,
Right.
right? And unfortunately, we see a lot of people, divorcing or berating each other simply because one partner does not make enough money or lost money or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
I've always looked at that like, you know what, this is not who my whole life is. That's just part
Right.
of our lives. We're bigger than that. So that's why we're able to laugh at our financial situation, still survive it, still, make decisions together and all of that. But, having to judge your spouse or your loved ones by what they are able to bring to the table or what they can do for you, I personally think is flawed. And this
It
is
is.
just my,
It is.
perception.
I agree.
But if you can love and support somebody, whether they're in their knees because you love them, until they can stand strong in themselves, that's a great investment because when they're able to stand strong, then you win together.
That's right.
You
You can
see what I'm
hold both of
saying?
y'all up.
Yeah.
Hey, I love that. And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we're gonna end the show with that because I think that was great. Stand strong together,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, yeah, stand strong together. When your spouse win, you win, or your loved ones. When they win, you win. When they're in a bad place, be there for them,
Right.
to comfort and, have their back in a
Right.
way. So
Okay.
that's the secret to the 25 years of marriage. You know what I'm saying?
My
I
girl,
loved you too much.
I love
You
you
know,
back
to
just the same. So, all right, well, great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we thank you for joining us for another great episode of Conversations Under the Hood.
Absolutely.